Good evening, everyone. My name is Susan Kabacia. I am a research scientist from the National Museums of Kenya, and I take this opportunity first and foremost, and this is to appreciate the fact that I've been given this opportunity to present to you today. I'll be presenting on mushroom cultivation, and this is for improved livelihoods in Kenya. And mushrooms are of great economic value, and this is as food. Both wild edible and medicinal mushrooms are vital, and this is because they provide a key source for vitamins, for minerals, and also for protein. And also, they are very important income generation activities. And over 2,000 wild edible mushrooms have been documented in the wild. And we have 650 mushrooms that are of medicinal value. In East Africa, we have 351 species that are known for edibility, whereas in Kenya, we have over 100 species, and these ones are in different groups. They have been recognized as the termitophilic and the ectomycorrhiza and the saprophytic mushrooms. And we find that the ectomycorrhizas and the termitophilic mushrooms are the most preferred. And this is probably because of their flavor and the good taste. However, we also have the saprophytic mushrooms that are equivalent to those ones that have been cultivated, and they mostly grow on wood. Some of them are oysters. These are wild oysters, and the wood ear mushrooms, and also the ganoderma, which are actually prepared into tea extracts. And traditionally, mushrooms have been collected from the wild, and this is for a long time through gathering and wild collections. And we find that since the 19th century, the discovery of mushrooms came into place. And this is when the mushroom mycelium was discovered as a seed for mushrooms. And since then, cultivation of mushrooms has expanded. And this has been very key because it is one way of protecting the wild edible mushrooms from extinction, mainly because suitable habitats are disappearing through the conversion of the forested ecosystems, and because of the land use changes. And also the demand for mushroom as an alternative source of protein is also increasing in the country. Mushroom as an agribusiness opportunity in Kenya, it is still at its infancy, though it is a way of generating income and actually raising the livelihoods of the communities. And we find that 4 species have mainly been brought into cultivation, although only 2 species, mainly Barton and oyster species, are cultivated at a larger scale. And when it comes to these other medicinal mushrooms, such as shiitake and ganoderma, they are cultivated by quite a few number of people, and they are also not popular. And in this case, we find that 35 mushroom species have been commercially cultivated, and that is worldwide. However, in Kenya, we have not yet brought most of the species to domestication. However, that is not to say that research has not been carried out on the species that we have in the environment. And we found out that a few researchers have done experimental cultivation, and especially of the wood ear mushrooms and of the yellow oyster. and even of the Macrolepiota. And these species have been actually been cultivated up to spawning and even up to utilization, and also experimenting with the different types of substrate. And it has been proved possible that we can domesticate some of the species that we have in the wild. And domestication is not difficult, and it is possible for us to domesticate what is in our habitats, as it has been done in other countries like China, where over 35 species have been brought into commercial cultivation. And so a few stages are normally taken in domesticating the wild edible mushrooms. And the first step actually involves the collecting of the mushrooms in the wild. After collecting them, they are taken to the laboratory, and using aseptic techniques, the mushrooms are cultured on artificial culture media. Then the next step is to prepare the spawn, or rather the mushroom seed, and this is using grains that we actually cultivate in the country. And the fourth step is now trying to cultivate the mushrooms using the agricultural and the industrial waste that we generate. And why should we cultivate mushrooms? The reason as to why we should cultivate mushrooms, one of the reasons is that mushrooms are a profitable venture, and no land is required. And this one makes it possible for all people, or rather for the urban dwellers and the rural communities, to cultivate mushrooms regardless of them having land. And the other thing is that it is also possible for the activity to be carried out by people from different age groups, and also from different gender categories. It is an alternative source of protein, and for people who don't consume meat, who are vegetarians, then this becomes a very good source of protein. The cultivation is also possible and sustainable, and because it utilizes the readily available agricultural waste that we generate from maize crops, from cultivating wheat, from cultivating sugarcane, from horticulture, banana leaves. We have the waste from different tree species that can be used to grow actually mushrooms. And the other thing is that mushrooms are an important protein source, and you find that they have vitamins, or rather components that lack actually in other foods. And some of the vitamins that are very key that lack in other foods are the B vitamins. When mushrooms are exposed to sunlight, they actually absorb vitamin D, and they become now a good source of vitamin D. They also have good antioxidants, and also some mushrooms, especially the oyster mushrooms, they have medicinal value. The other thing is that the cultivation of mushrooms does not interfere with other forms of farming activities, and so they can be integrated, and it becomes a sustainable way of recycling waste. The other thing is that it is a short cycle crop that only takes 2 months between the substrate preparation and harvesting of the mushrooms. The demand for mushroom in Kenya is growing, it's high, and we find that we've been producing less than a ton, whereas the demand for mushrooms is over a ton per year. The other thing is that mushrooms can be cultivated by different groups of people, and at any scale, that is, at a small scale and even at large scale. And despite the usefulness of cultivating mushrooms, we find that there are challenges. And some of these challenges are good to address because they are possible. It's possible to find a solution. And one of the challenges is the market access. And this is brought about because most farmers that we have in Kenya are small-scale farmers producing small volumes of mushrooms. And so you find accessing a large market becomes a problem because of sustainable farming. And so this favors, you find now it favors the few large-scale farmers. But the solution could be farmers developing networks and actually marketing as a group. It is happening in Rwanda, so it is possible to happen in Kenya. And also, it's also an opportunity now that entrepreneurs can find, so that they buy from farmers and now they sell to actually a bigger market. The other thing is the climate control. And we found out that most of the species that we are cultivating in Kenya, they are of exotic origin. And so you find that they lack the adaptability. And so we find the cost of production going higher because you have to control the conditions under which are suitable, or rather which favor the production of the growth of these mushrooms. And so it is possible for us to domesticate the equivalent wild mushrooms that we have actually imported, or we are currently cultivating, and also coming up with breeding research programs so that we can breed species that are actually specific for the climatic conditions that we have in Kenya. And the other thing is that farmers lack skills. And just like cultivating or rather growing any other crop, it is important, first of all, to gain skills. The other thing is important also to have knowledge and information, because this is a sensitive fungus. Mushrooms are actually sensitive, and they require skills. Because also the requirements for mushrooms also differ from other crops. They're delicate to handle, but with the right skills and the right information, then mushroom cultivation is a good venture. And so I would propose that farmers who are aspiring to to carry out the activity, that they should connect and seek knowledge from experienced farmers. The other thing is that they need also to go to research institutions where mushroom cultivation or rather mushroom research is being carried out, and so that they can be helped and so that they can learn from the experts. And also, we are also having the issue of the competitors, and this is coming through imports. As I've said, we are not producing enough mushrooms in the country, and so we need to introduce more farmers into farming. And the other thing is that when we are not able to produce enough, then we allow importers such as Rwanda mushrooms to come in from Kigali farms. And for us to mitigate these, it is now required of us to actually enhance our research and also encourage farmers to do farming. Then I'm going to talk about different types of mushrooms that are cultivated. It is good to highlight some of the processes that go on and the advantages of cultivating these mushrooms. Even before we go to domesticating our own, it is because we are going to improve our livelihoods as we carry on our research. And one of the species that is the second most cultivated is oyster mushrooms. Although it is becoming also the most cultivated because of so many advantages. And one of the advantages is that recently it is gaining acceptance, and this is mainly because of factors like being medicinally superior. It is easy to cultivate. Its spawn is locally available, and materials to cultivate these species are easily accessible. The other thing is that it is less labor intensive, and the cost of production is a bit lower compared to any other species. And there are requirements now when it comes to cultivating mushrooms, because mushrooms are cultivated indoors. And one of the steps is actually to come up with a mushroom house or mushroom structure. And these structures, they can be constructed using mud, using concrete, using bricks. And the beauty is that mushroom can be done at any scale, as we said, small or even at large scale. And the second step, this is now the acquisition of the substrates that are required to cultivate mushrooms. And the substrates should be prepared in a way that they are of good size in terms of the pieces that are used. And at the same time, this substrate is usually supplemented, and some of the supplements that are normally added to the substrates so that we can have a higher yield is like use of wheat bran or the calcium carbonate to regulate the pH, the gypsum for conditioning the substrates, which are soaked in water overnight. They are drained well. They are packaged into approved polythene bags, and their mouths are closed well before they are now put into the drum where they are pasteurized. And so that step is pasteurization, whereby the substrates are now pasteurized. They are pasteurized using a drum, and this drum usually has a stand so that the substrates are above the water levels. And this process takes about 4 to 6 hours. And the fourth step is where now spawning comes in. And it is important to ensure that the spawn that is used or the mushroom seed is of good quality, because that will determine the yield that you're going to have, and also the production. And the other thing is that spawning should be done in a clean and sterile environment using equipments that have also been sterilized. And the other step is incubation, that when these mushrooms have been spawned or the substrate has been spawned, they are taken to a room. And this room is called incubation room. And this one is a room that has been prepared with the shelves that have been well sterilized. And so therefore, that room should be clean with the clean circulating air. A low intensity is required. And this room should be free of predators such as rats and mice. We go to the sixth step, whereby now when that has been accomplished, colonization has taken place in the incubation room and it is complete, holes are made. And this allows now fruiting and also increasing the light intensity of that incubation room, or the substrates are transferred to another room. And the moment the mushrooms start fruiting, they usually take 3 to 5 days. And that is between the fruiting and the harvesting. And this harvesting can go on for up to 2 months. And we also have the other cultivation now of the other species that we call Button. It has been the most cultivated species, though it's being overtaken by the oyster. And one thing about this species is that it is more marketable. It is consumed by a high percentage of Kenyan population, and especially in the hotel industry. These mushrooms have a longer shelf life compared to any other species. And there are also the challenging thing about the species is that the number of substances required are more, which actually is not a challenge, it's just a requirement for this species. And then the other thing is that the process of substrate preparation is a bit longer than the other, or involving. Also, it also requires labor. And the spawn for this species is not yet domestic, it's not locally available. So we import a spawn for button mushrooms. And as we said there, it is possible for us to come up with actually with spawn from mushrooms that are occurring in our habitats. And the other thing is that as a result, the cost of production becomes a bit higher, but that is not to discourage farmers from cultivating these species. The beauty of this species is that it also sells the cost of this, the price for button mushroom is also high. And the process now of cultivating button mushrooms, it is as shown below. This process takes approximately 21 days. And this is because the compositing of the substrate is a bit higher. And so it requires turning of the substrate after an interval of every 2 days. And after that, the substrate is taken through a tunnel so that it is pasteurized, whereby it is spawned. And after spawning, the substrate is prepared by adding casing soil on the top of the substrate. And this is when it is when compared to the oyster mushroom cultivation. Here the forest soil is used, and after a period of time, then you have the fruiting taking place, and the mushrooms are ready now to go to the next stage. And this next stage now is the 7th step of mushroom cultivation for both species, and this involves the consumption and the commercialization. And I want to talk about the various outlets where mushrooms are sold. This is a question that is normally asked by so many farmers, that if you cultivate mushrooms, where are we going to sell them? And some of these market avenues are the supermarkets. We have hypermarkets like the village market, and we also have the grocery shops. Most of these shops, you find them in parkland. Some we find them in city park. We have hotels, the high-end hotels. We have individuals, and this includes our neighbors, the colleagues at work, the friends, and the family. And mushroom can actually form very, 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 very important delicacies, including a breakfast. And the other thing is consuming them with other dishes like rice, ugali. And finally, I want to acknowledge the National Museums of Kenya and the University of Nairobi, and also for the National Geographic Society for funding this work. Carnivore, whom we have worked with in the collection of the wild mushrooms that we've been able to culture in our laboratories, and they come up actually with the clean mycelium. And finally, I want to conclude by thanking all my viewers. Thank you.